Nice to see you.
We're not, so I'm gonna.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I know I'm trying to show. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dion Wan, the Public Information Officer for the Boulder Police Department. Thank you all for coming. We called you here tonight because we have an update in the series of incidents on University Hill with the burglaries and the sexual contacts. We are somewhat limited in the information we can share because this is still a very active and ongoing investigation, and the details, you'll hear why. So first, our first speaker is going to be Chief Maris Harold. Our next speaker will be Deputy Chief Stephen Redfern. Our third speaker will be District Attorney Michael Doherty, and Commander Tom Trujillo will speak if there are questions. So right now I'm going to turn it over to Chief Harold. Chief.
Thanks, Dion. Thanks for everybody for coming out today. Again, my name is Maris Harold. I'm the Police Chief at Boulder. We are here today to provide detailed updates on the recent pattern of burglary and sexual offenses in the University Hill neighborhood. First, I want to acknowledge the community harm that these incidents have caused this community. I also want to recognize the fantastic work of the Boulder Police Department's investigative team, our patrol officers, the DA's office, the Colorado Bureau of Investigations that have been working tirelessly on this case. I'm shortly going to turn this over to the Deputy Chief. His name is Steve Redfern, and he has been monitoring and managing this case since the onset. So with no further ado, Deputy Chief Redfern.
Thank you, Chief. As Chief Harold said, my name is Stephen Redfern, R-E-D-F-E-A-R-N. As previously released early this week, we became aware of a concerning series of burglaries involving a suspect who entered occupied homes with the intent to commit sexual acts. The suspect appears to have targeted college-aged women for these crimes. The suspect also stole items from some of the victims and stole the victim's car during at least one of these incidents. Due to the concerning nature of these crimes, they became the top priority for our agency, and multiple personnel have been assigned to work this case around the clock. While following numerous leads, our detectives began to review other crimes in the past of a sexual nature to see if we had other crimes that matched the description and circumstances of this case. Detectives did find similarities between this case and a 2021 case involving indecent exposure, where a juvenile was charged with 7 misdemeanor charges relating to those indecent exposures. It quickly became clear that the juvenile suspect in the 2021 cases was likely the suspect in these recent crimes. While detectives continued their investigation, we placed this juvenile suspect under surveillance to ensure he was not committing additional criminal acts. Based upon the observation of our officers, late last night, being Thursday evening, we took this suspect into custody for violating the conditions of his probation from the 2021 indecent exposure cases. Simultaneously, a search warrant was executed at his residence in the city of Boulder, where items of evidence linking the suspect to the recent crimes were discovered. This afternoon, as the suspect was being held on the probation violation, detectives worked with the Boulder County District Attorney's Office to file numerous new charges relating to the recent crimes in the University Hill neighborhood. Due to the suspect being a juvenile, we are not able to release his identifying information at this time. However, I can tell you the suspect in this case has been charged with the following crimes: 3 counts of second-degree burglary, 2 counts of indecent exposure, 1 count of attempted invasion of privacy for sexual gratification, 1 count of unlawful sexual contact, and 1 count of aggravated motor vehicle theft. It is likely that the suspect has been involved in other related crimes in the area, and additional charges are likely in the future. The suspect is currently being held at a juvenile detention center. The chief alluded to this, and I just want to reiterate that the incredible work our police officers have done in this case allowed us to have a quick identification of this suspect and a quick apprehension. I also want to thank the Boulder County District Attorney's Office for their assistance with this case. It is possible that there are additional victims or witnesses out there that we have not spoken to. If anyone has information about this case and we have not spoken to you, please reach out to the lead detective on this case, Detective Ashley Flynn, at 303-441-1850. Again, 303-441-1850. The identification of the suspect in this case would not have been made as quickly as it was without the assistance of our community. We received numerous tips and information from the public that made this arrest possible. In closing, I want to acknowledge the anxiety and fear that these crimes cause for many in our community. It is our hope that everyone will sleep a little bit easier tonight knowing that this suspect has been apprehended. Before we take some questions, I want to turn it over to the Boulder District Attorney, Mr. Michael Doherty.
Good evening. My name is Michael Doherty. I have the honor of serving as the District Attorney. And first I want to thank you, the members of the media, for being here. I know Friday evening is not the time you're looking to come out to Boulder, to the police department, but this was news that could not wait. And given that there's a juvenile in custody, there are relatively strict limitations on what we could share with the media, as Deputy Chief Redfern referenced. But certainly we're here today to tell you there's no longer a threat to the community. I want to start by acknowledging the outstanding police work by the Boulder Police Department, their detectives and officers. They worked tirelessly over the past week to identify the perpetrator, track him down, build enough evidence to charge him, and then present a search warrant to the court, an arrest warrant to the court later today, and to now have him in custody being held without bond, which I'll talk about more in just a moment. But I can't tell you enough how hard the Boulder Police Department worked to make this outcome and this news today possible. And obviously it was a terrifying crime spree and had a tremendous impact on the victims. So I want to thank the Boulder Police Department for their diligence and their hard work. I came here last night to the Boulder Police Department around 7:45, 8 o'clock, just to check in. We've been working with them all week on this case. When I arrived last night, you would think it was the middle of the day. How many detectives and officers were working downstairs in this building as hard as they possibly could to locate the perpetrator, build enough evidence against him, and take him into custody. I want to join Deputy Chief Redfern and Chief Harold in encouraging other victims to come forward. If there are other victims, we encourage you to reach out to Detective Flynn and the Boulder Police Department so justice can be done on your behalf. And I also want to focus on supporting and honoring the victims who've already come forward. Thanks to their courage and their strength, we were able to identify the perpetrator, and Boulder PD was able to build enough evidence to present an arrest warrant to the court. So I want to recognize that although we're here to talk today about the arrest of the individual who's being charged with these offenses, that it's because of the victims that we're here today. And it's because of their strength and their courage that we were able to bring this perpetrator into custody. There are a number of things that I just want to touch on briefly. First is that with the help of the Boulder Police Department and the Probation Department, there was a warrant issued for this individual's arrest yesterday, and he was taken into custody yesterday on a probation warrant. Today, an arrest warrant was prepared by the Boulder Police Department and the District Attorney's Office and presented to the court, and he is now in custody on the arrest warrant as well. Deputy District Attorneys from my office appeared in court today and argued that the individual should be held, although he's a juvenile, and the court agreed to set a no bond hold, so he's currently being held without bond in a juvenile facility. The Deputy Chief referenced the past case from 2021, so I'll just briefly touch on that. He was charged with indecent exposure, a number of counts of indecent exposure, which is a Class 1 misdemeanor under the law. He pled guilty to indecent exposure in that case. He was then evaluated by doctors who specialize in working with sex offenders. He was diagnosed as amenable to treatment, and he was placed on high-level juvenile sex offender probation. And a number of conditions, including treatment, curfew requirements, parental supervision, and other conditions were placed upon him as part of his probation. And I will stress, as I do every time I talk to the media, that he's innocent unless and until proven guilty. The charges are merely allegations. We have to guarantee that he has a fair trial if this goes to trial here in Boulder County. So I say that whenever I talk to the media, of course. And I'm happy to take questions if you have any for me or for the Boulder police folks. Thanks.
Does anyone have any questions?
Can you characterize what he was up to when you took him into custody yesterday without getting specific? Was he intending on doing harm again, or?
All I'll comment on that is that we did take him into custody at his residence. He was at home.
Where's mom and dad?
Mom and Dad were at home with him as well.
Were they aware, obviously the situation last year?
I'm assuming they were aware of the situation last year, but we don't have any knowledge on if they had any knowledge of this incident or not.
Can you give us his age or no?
He is 17.
So what does that mean when he turns 18? Can you describe how these charges might follow him once he turns into an adult, or?
Sure, I can share with you, he just recently turned 17. There's a couple different paths this case could follow, so I'll answer your question directly, but it's really too early for me to say with any certainty what's going to happen. He could be prosecuted as a juvenile, and the case would then go through the juvenile justice system. There's certain sentencing options that are available to the court on juvenile cases, including a sentence to what's called DYS, which is a secure facility. We would also evaluate a case of this nature to determine if we should seek a transfer to adult court. So that's something our office will work on as well. And again, this is just the very early stages, but I'll have more information on that in the coming weeks.
I know there was a reported assault on campus during the dorm move-in week. Do you guys know if this is related to that?
I'll have to turn that over to Boulder PD.
I'm going to let our Detective Commander Tom Trujillo answer that question.
So we've been in contact with the University of Colorado Police Department on that assault, and at this time, it doesn't look like this person is involved in that assault.
Okay.
Different-
What's the proximity
different
of Mom
MO.
and Dad's house to the university?
They live in East Boulder, so across the town.
Can you all repeat the charges the teen faces?
So he has been charged with 3 counts of second-degree burglary, 2 counts of indecent exposure, 1 count of attempted invasion of privacy for sexual gratification, 1 count of unlawful sexual contact, and 1 count of aggravated motor vehicle theft. And if you need to repeat those, I'm happy to get with you afterwards.
You mentioned, people can rest easier, and so forth, but it's never good to drop your guard completely. What sort of things should people continue to do to be proactive and vigilant?
Sure. So we've had a lot of conversations this week. We've had our officers in University Hill in contact with many of the students, and we understand last weekend when the majority of these happened, it was very hot out. Some of the residences didn't have air conditioning, so people were leaving windows open on ground levels, things like that. And so we're just encouraging people, lock your doors. What we were seeing is community where several people were living in an apartment and people may not. It wasn't unusual for people to come and go. People were propping apartment doors open with the rocks so they didn't have to enter the code and things like that. So just some basic, just being a little bit more aware of your surroundings. And one thing we've encouraged throughout this is, if people see someone that's acting strange, to give us a call. We hear from people all the time that say, "Oh, we didn't want to bother you, but that's why we're here." And so we encourage people. We don't. Your neighborhoods better than we do, and if you see someone that's acting suspicious or anything like that, to call us, let us come. We'd much rather be safe than sorry and come and determine that there's no harm or anything like that.
Can you characterize how much this person's been in contact with law enforcement here and elsewhere? Is it extensive history?
I don't have his criminal history handy at this time, and being that he's a juvenile, we may have some restrictions on that. I don't know if the DA has any. No other criminal history prior to last year. Okay.
I just want to make sure I understand correctly. There was the incident that happened around August 18th. You all are saying that he's not been charged in connection to that. Did I hear that correctly?
I believe that it might be the question that was asked
Yeah.
earlier, and as the detective commander said, we don't believe he is related to that sexual assault.
Now, last year when the whole first situation happened, was he on probation? Was he being monitored by police?
I'm sorry, can you
Was
clarify?
he on probation? Was he being monitored by police? Was there any sort of check-ins with him over the last year after the first set of charges?
Sure, not with police. He was under the supervision of the Boulder County Juvenile Probation Department.
Okay. And do you have any idea of how often they were checking in at his home?
I don't.
Were those cases, the indecent exposure cases that happened last year, did those happen near or around Boulder campus, or are you able to elaborate on any of that?
They did not. They happened in East Boulder.
So East Boulder, I believe, fairly close to his residence.
Does he have a driver's license?
I don't know that, sorry.
And I apologize if you've mentioned these details before. How does he engage his victims? Does he have conversations? Does he sneak in the middle of the night? Can you just describe his modus operandi?
So what we know on the 3 incidents that we're charging in this case is that he was entering an unlocked apartment with the intent to commit sexual acts. But beyond that, we're still, correct me if I'm wrong, we're still doing interviews at this time and just ironing out all those details.
But no conversations with the victim prior to the crime?
So these were middle of the night, early in the morning. The victim was waking up by this guy. And again, a lot of this stuff is just coming forward. A lot more investigation will be done in the next couple weeks.
Thank you.
You all said last year in 2021, this juvenile was classified as having a high-level juvenile sex offender status. Did I hear that correctly?
No.
No.
Can you
Sure.
clarify what that means?
Sure. So in 2021, he was arrested by the Boulder Police Department. He was charged with indecent exposure in a series of incidents that took place in 2021. He was arrested by Boulder Police Department. He was prosecuted by the District Attorney's Office as a juvenile. He was 16 years old at the time. He pled guilty to indecent exposure, so the top charge. It's a Class 1 misdemeanor. As part of that, he was subject to what happens with anybody, juvenile or adult, who pleads guilty to a sex offense. They're evaluated by doctors who specialize in evaluating sex offenders for the court. That report was prepared and provided to the court before the court imposed a sentence of juvenile sex offender probation. He was determined to be amenable to treatment by the doctors who examined him. So the court sentenced him to juvenile sex offender probation. With that came a number of conditions, including treatment, supervision, curfew, supervision by parents or adults living in the home. And there could be other conditions. Those are the top ones that I was able to look at before joining you tonight. So not qualified as high risk. So if I misspoke, I apologize. But he was classified as a juvenile sex offender and placed on juvenile sex offender probation at 16 years old.
Was he allowed to attend school during that time?
I don't have that information at this time.
So supervision for a curfew, obviously these incidents recently happened in the middle of the night. Who was supposed to be watching him?
So it's a good question, and I believe that's the subject of additional investigation by the police department and questions about whether the parents were aware that he was leaving the house or not, or things that the police have been working on.
So you all can't say at this time whether or not the parents are culpable in any way?
I don't have that information, and I believe Boulder PD is still working on it, and I certainly wouldn't jump to the conclusion that the parents are culpable. This is very early in the investigation. We're meeting with you tonight to let you know that he's in custody. He's being held on a no bond hold, and that the danger of the community has been ended thanks to the work of the Boulder Police Department with assistance from the Probation Department, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, and the District Attorney's Office.
Now that 2021 incident, did that happen on December 9th at MacArthur Drive?
So-
That's when he was arrested. That's when he was arrested.
That's correct.
Do you have the date of the original incident, like the indecent exposures?
It'll be in the press release.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
In a case like this, generally, how would your office or the police department interface with the school district when there's a person going to school, possibly, that are committing crimes like this?
So, I'm sorry, for clarification, you're saying how would we interact with them now?
Or how would the school district handle it? And I'm assuming they'd be in communication with you, with the justice system.
So I could turn it over to the Boulder Police Department. I assume that the Boulder Police Department and our office will be reaching out to the school system. The school system will take appropriate action, but I don't have any information on that at this time.
And that's basically what we do. We reach out to the school district and let them know that he's been taken into custody and let them know where he's at. It'll be up to them to make a decision what he does at school.
I mean, you know why I'm asking, so parents would be concerned that this person's been going to school with them, with their child.
Right.
What can you address that at all?
Again, we'll let the school district know that he's in custody, what the charges are, and it's up to them as to what they're going to do with him.
So you can confirm he's been going to the local school for the past year?
I cannot. I do not know what he's been doing the last couple of months, last month. So.
Is there any indication to how the suspect will plead to these recent charges?
So he will likely, almost certainly, enter a plea of not guilty, and that's what would normally happen in a criminal case, including juvenile cases. He has a right, of course, to be presumed innocent. He's presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty, and the charges are merely allegations against him. So as the court process moves forward, we will, of course, keep the media and the community informed.
Sir, can you characterize, if you can't, that's fine, his demeanor when he was arrested? I mean, was he just...
I don't have that information at this time. I will say he was taken into custody without incident. That's about all I can offer you on that.
Thank you.
I'll say we appreciate everyone coming. Again, there's still an active investigation ongoing, and so there's still so much more to do. So we thank you for coming and all your questions, and we'll be sending out a press release summarizing everything shortly. So thank you.